All right, well, day 2 of Blister Summit 2023, and I'm here with Cyrus Schenck from Renoun. And I just want to get into it as far as the story. Cyrus, you are the owner and founder of Renoun, and you guys have a very unique backstory and a very interesting approach that you take. So please, let's hear it.
Yeah. So I started Renoun when I was in college, still studying aeronautical engineering, and came across this material that was like super interesting to me. And basically, once we tested it, I dropped out of college and started Renoun. So it was really the ethos of it came from this material. It's we now call VibeStop, but it's what's called a non-Newtonian polymer. And essentially, I don't know if you ever put like cornstarch and water. If you like mix cornstarch and water, it's kind of goopy and soft. Yeah. But if you punch it, it gets really hard. Mm-hmm. And when I was in class, I saw this stuff and I was like, holy smokes, like if this was real, if these numbers are real, we can put this inside of a pair of skis and it's going to be completely different depending on how fast and how hard you're riding it. So when I was still in school, I got some of this material, I put inside a pair of skis that I was building on the side just for fun. And the data was just insane. And we basically could change the natural frequency, which is basically a factor of the stiffness, by over 300%. And once I got that data, that's when I dropped out and kind of left that career behind, or the career aeronautical world behind, and started doing skis. And since then, we've actually patented in skis, snowboards, but also basketball floors. And so we have about 50 installations around the world right now. And like the Olympics, the squash Olympics actually have our stuff in it. There's a couple NBA players I'm not allowed to say, but they have it in their courts, and a bunch of training facilities as well. And that could decrease vibrations for the knees in the basketball world. And one thing we've also kind of like full circle heard echoing is customers on these skis will write in saying like, hey, I haven't taken Advil since I bought your skis. Like my knees are like, they feel so much better than they ever have. So it was something that we didn't really expect. Like the idea was like, hey, let's have a ski that's super stable at high speeds. Let's have a ski that can do more with less. And what ended up happening was people were like, yeah, my knees don't hurt. So I thought that was pretty interesting and kind of a fun byproduct of the technology that we put into all of our skis here.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible and really cool to hear about how it's applied beyond the world of skiing. But let's also just hear a bit more about how that development of I'm going to start a ski company really went, and maybe how you kind of approach that process and really build that first pair of skis and went from there.
Yeah, so the first pair of skis, like everybody always asks like, oh, how do you build skis? Because it sounds really complicated. The reality is Google will teach you everything. So I just Googled a lot. And just started building stuff and figuring things out. The first pair of skis were absolutely horrific, and they were so bad. I think the first pair we never even mounted because it was just like such a brick. It wasn't going to work at all. But you get better throughout the years, and then very quickly realized that building skis and selling skis are very different. So after like year 4 or 5, we hired a factory in Canada, which is the same one we still use today. And we locally sourced all our wood and everything, and our volume could like quintuple. And our quality went up, and everything was like way better about that. And the unique thing about Renoun too is from the get-go, because I started this thing basically with no knowledge about the ski industry. Like I was a complete outsider. I don't know if maybe do you know Mike Nick? Mm-mm. So he started Cyber Cartel, which then was sold to Raj. And he was one of the first guys. And he won the X Games like 3 times. Like he was like OG with Line and Jason Leventhal and stuff. And he helped me out brand the first like couple years of Renoun. And I remember one day he started like list off these famous skiers, and he's like, "You don't know who any of these people are, do you?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You don't know who Glenn Plake is?" I was like, "I know who Glenn Plake is." Okay,
that's a staple. All right.
Yeah, I know who that is. But I was like so outside of the ski world that when I started, I was the one crazy enough to put this VibeStop, this technology inside. But also our business model is direct to consumer, and it's something that like has blown me away that more people don't do. Like when we first started, like it's been 10, 12 years now, it was like kind of a new thing with like the mattresses of the world, like Warby Parker glasses and everything like that. But in the ski world, no one had done it, and we were the first company founded to start doing direct to consumer. And the reason behind that is because our skis are super expensive to build because of the technology. So we needed a way to capture more of that margin to pay for the skis, and the way to do that was direct. And it now makes, like looking back on it, makes total sense. Like I don't understand how, like just the numbers behind selling through shops, you have to have like huge volumes. And there's the big legacy brands that makes sense. They have the ins, they've been in the same shops for, in some cases 75 years. And that's great. But for a new company, to me, it was a no-brainer to go direct. And it's been really fun because it also allows us to try things. Like we know how a sale's going within sometimes minutes. Like we did this whiskey glass giveaway, And we basically just like had like 1,000 glasses Renoun with like Renoun carved into them. We sent a text message out like, first, people like who want to buy this, it's yours. And it sold out. Like our text messages like didn't even get out in time before they were sold out. It was like 8 minutes or something. And so you can start seeing like, okay, what obviously free glasses are really rad. What if I do like a t-shirt? Like we're gonna make these things next year. So these are gonna be super fun.
Pretty fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a little bit different. So this is like actually from a different company that I saw and I bought it as a joke actually. And everybody loved it. So I was like, well, maybe we should just build this. So it's been on the radar and we'll be making this next year. So it'll be super fun. But yeah, B2C is the way to go.
Yeah.
I should say this. B2C is the way to go if you're a new brand and you need to go from 0 to let's say 5,000, 0 to 10,000 units. After that, like you can start branching into shops and everything. But the rule of thumb is like you need to sell 20 to 30,000 skis to break even. Mm-hmm. And if you're selling through shops, that's a lot of skis. That's 10, 15 years of lead work to go from 0 to 30,000. And you're talking $5-10 million investment minimum. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you kind of explain that model. And now I'm just curious, maybe if you could dive into how the timeline of this has looked and maybe how things have kind of progressed and picked up and kind of where you're at today as far as the lay of the land. Yeah, I mean, looking back like 12 years ago, it is crazy to think of like how far we have come because I started building skis in college, dropped out, and for 3 years built in my actually kind of garage / my dorm room, my old dorm room. The school still let me do that for some reason. Did that for a couple years, and then I got a factory, so we've been working with that same factory. And our volume, we've always grown. We had 1 year of 5% growth, but other than that, it's been like 30 to 50. It's been kind of nuts. And like it's the point where we're pumping on the brakes a little bit because the risk is getting too much. Like if we don't grow another astronomical amount next year, then you can trip and fall. So we're trying to like pull things back a little bit. But yeah, we got a great team. They're all over the world. We got our marketing gal, Yasha, she's in Salt Lake City. We've got our designer who's in Tokyo. We got our ad guy in Canada, factories in Canada. I'm in Burlington. Our customer service person's also in Vermont. Our video guys in Waterbury. So it's kind of wild, like how much it's grown over the years. And it's been fun too, because it's comparatively a very lean team. Mm-hmm. And again, because we're direct, we don't have to have as many people, cooks in the kitchen and stuff like that. But yeah, it's also like the development side of like the skis themselves. Obviously when you start building skis, like I was designing everything myself. And at the end of the day, as much as I am a nerd, skis are art. And it really is. Like you can build the perfect ski on a CAD, on a computer, but that does not almost never translates to a good ski on snow. And it's been really interesting over the years getting more people, feedback, obviously from you guys and everything. You're like, hey, this ski's really good at this. It's not good at that. And so we're like, you guys should probably like look into that and figure out like, why is that tail hooking and realize that, we need to like tie it in, 2 millimeters in the tail or lift the tail up or something like that. So yeah, it's been really interesting to figure out the prototyping side of things. And like one thing, we were just talking about earlier is how we prototype, like, rather than doing just like huge skis, like I'm 6'6", so I'm really biased to long skis. And so we're now prototyping 177s and 163. So rather than just prototyping, a really long 184 and trickling that down to, 156 or a really short ski or something like that, we're actually now trying to hit two sides of the spectrum to make a more holistic thing. Because the reality is when we were building the Earhart, is the feedback we had from people who are riding 146 or 49 or 156 had very different feedback than, let's say, somebody my size. And so rather than just taking one side of the spectrum or the other, we're going to test both and then take that feedback and incorporate it throughout the product line. Because it's kind of surprising, but as you scale skis from a 184 down to a 156, the ski is completely different. And you have to be benchmarking across that so that as much as you can give a similar feel and a similar ski from all the different size lengths. Otherwise, you have slalom ski for one and a GS ski for the other. Yeah, and just trying to integrate more variables into that prototyping process. So maybe that end result is a little more accurate or you have more information about it.
And more people. I mean, the biggest thing like this year, we finally got like a real spreadsheet of getting like official data in. And similar to what you guys are doing in the sense like we have you put in your height, your weight, how much you ski and all these information so we can have a baseline of, okay, if someone says this, but they're coming from here, how much we want to take that into account versus like this person. So it's been really helpful. And at the end of the day, more people on your skis testing is always better. Especially again, since I'm 6'6", I'm not the right person to be testing most of the time. So
yeah. And I just want to hear a bit more about how you've kind of taken that unisex approach into the prototyping process and what that really means for you guys.
Yeah, so as we transitioned to a fully unisex line, because we had the woman-specific Earhart before, and now we're kind of merging everything together, just for simplicity's sake, is rather than having like a woman-specific line that is designed by women, we're saying, hold on, let's do unisex, and let's prototype the long and the short skis, which tend to be men on the longer skis and tend to be women on the short skis. And so having both sides, both people in the room talking about this stuff. Obviously, some guys are skiing shorter skis and some women are skiing longer skis. But in general, making sure that everybody has a voice in that prototyping phase, so that all of our skis have a unisex line that are going to be appropriate for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting approach and one that I appreciate. I mean, I know we've seen across the industry a lot of different approaches to what it means to have a women-specific or a unisex line. And I think the big thing is just that if women are involved in that prototyping process, then it doesn't really matter what the end result is, so long as that they, we're a guiding voice along the way.
100%. It should be a lot more simple than that, than having like these two things. And and one thing actually we're going to start doing is we'll have like different colorways. And so let's say, this is an extreme example, but you have a white, a black, and a blue ski. And so the idea with that is like, depending on who you are and how you want to, what kind of ski you want on your feet, you can kind of choose like the colorway, kind of like a Nike shoe, right? You go to Nikes, you get an Air Jordan, you can choose like, they probably have like 17 colors, but we'll have like 3 colors. You can choose kind of the vibe you want to have on your feet. And the graphic will be like the same, but just like slight differences in color. And I think I'm really excited for that because there's, back to the nerd side of things, you can test all that stuff and you can figure out what people are going to like, and you can build accordingly, you can refill accordingly, and you end up having, rather than having like leftover skis of like let's say a men's ski or a women's ski, you can tailor the colorways based off of what's selling exactly, so you don't end up having like any extra inventory, and people can choose exactly what they want.
Nice.
So,
I like that. Yeah, and I mean, fun. Regardless of what people say, I think men and women both gravitate towards certain aesthetics. So just providing options.
We made a men's only ski as a joke like 5 years ago, and it was like all pink, or it was like mostly pink, and it was like hilarious, and people loved it. And there's still people today who are like, do you still have those skis? Like, like 5 years ago? Like, no. But there's skis that I love that would, if you put them on a mood board, would be a woman's graphic, and I think that ski's dope. So. I think Fisher did that, right? They had their Fisher Ranger, pure pink. So
people lost it over the pink. So
yeah. So like you can do all these things, and people will tell you what they want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should give the people what they want. I mean, VibeStop is such an interesting technology. It's one that we've now tested across multiple models of skis, and it is truly unique. So let's just really dive into VibeStop and kind of talk a bit about what that technology is and what it means.
VibeStop's really interesting because at the end of the day, it's the only material that is in any ski, that's in our ski that's not in anything else. Like all these skis have some element of metal in them, like Titanol. There's only one company in the world that makes Titanol. So, and there's 2 companies in the world that make metal edges. And it's like there's a few companies that make fiberglass. So at the end of the day, like everybody's making their own cakes kind of thing, the different recipes. And I really believe that most skis, almost all skis, are really great. But VibeStop is super interesting because it is the only thing that is only in Renoun. And it's something that is designed specifically to address some of the biggest problems in skiing, which is chatter and vibration. Because that's what, when the ski is chattering, that bouncing is going into your foot and going to your brain saying, this is scary, this is not fun. Yeah. And so if we can decrease that vibration, decrease that chatter, it's going to be a more fun ride, and you're going to enjoy yourself more. And you're going to look back and realize like, oh my gosh, I just skied this line that I never have skied before, or I skied it when I was, that's a line that I skied 20 years ago or something like that. So yeah, it's this material, it's called polydimethyl siloxane, and it's classified under this umbrella of a non-Newtonian. And the idea behind it is the molecules are shaped in a way that under slow or low stresses, so let's say powder skiing, when things are like a little softer and a little more loose, the molecules will literally like flow past one another. But if you take that same ski and you jump onto like a hard pack situation where you have like ice or just higher speeds, even if it's like, like nice snow, but your higher speeds, those molecules in that polymer are literally getting caught up on each other. And that translates to what people think of like a stiffer ski. And what's really happening is we're absorbing vibrations. But at the end of the day, a ski with full, like a bunch of metal in it is a very damp ski, and it's absorbing a lot of vibrations. So we're able to have this element that's like feels like metal when you're skiing fast or skiing hard. You come down and you hit down really hard from a jump or something, but it weighs less than wood. So we can have the best of both worlds. And it's something that has been super interesting because when we first started, we tested this stuff in the lab and found that we could change the natural frequency by over 300%, which is, basically stiffness in a ski. And it's something that, like, even the flooring business, like, we have companies who are testing it and they're like, wow, we've never even seen anything like this. This is crazy. And they're having to like redo how they quantify floors. And likewise with skis, like, people will flex a Renoun, like, oh, this is like a medium soft ski. And you're like, yeah, yeah. But when you start hauling, it's going to stiffen up. And that's an interesting thing. It's an element that has never been explored before. So it's fun to be, the pioneers in this and leading the way with the technology that's in the ski that no one else, has been able to do.
Yeah, it is incredibly interesting and really cool to see how you've applied it. I mean, for people who might have a hard time conceptualizing it, this is something that is almost instant. I mean, if you're going from a pretty firm turn to a softer turn, I mean, that is a constant dynamic that is changing within the ski.
Yeah, and it's super crazy. Like, the ski is literally changing. If you hit something in the front of your ski down to the back, like, the front of the ski is reacting differently than the back of your ski. And it's not so, like, and it's something we actually worked hard on. We had to tweak it so it wasn't too much. Because if your ski was, like, let's just say, I'll exaggerate, like, rock hard on the tip, but super soft in the tail, it's going to be too much of a transition. And you're going to be like, wow, the ski's like, it's changing too much. So we had to actually dial it back so it wasn't changing too much, but it is changing like super fast. It's crazy. Yeah, and there's no like electronics in it. There's nothing that needs to be plugged in at night or anything like that. It's just all based on the polymer. Just the material itself is just reacting.
Wow. And again, probably why that prototyping process is really important, because I imagine as the skier is able to apply a different type of energy or input to the ski is also reacting quite differently.
Yeah, 100%. I'm 6'6", 230 pounds. I'm going to have a lot more energy just by my pure mass into a ski than somebody who's, 5'5" and 110 pounds. So. Yeah.
And so are you applying that VibeStop in the same way across the lineup and across each length, or is it a little bit different? We're
scaling it down depending on what the ski is.
Yeah,
so just like you might scale up the thickness of a core, right? So like underfoot, a core might be anywhere from like 10 to 12 millimeters thick. But like a 184 will be 12, and then a 149 will be 9.9 or 10.1 or something like that. So just like you scale a core down, you also have to scale VibeStop, because otherwise, you have this ski that is too much. It's adapting too much. It's too chameleon-like.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when you started, you didn't quite think of all the ways that this could be applied to other industries
Yeah. The flooring thing was cool because we had an article in the backseat of the American Airlines. And this guy called me up. He's like, hey, I read your article. I've been selling floors for 40 years. And if this stuff is real, then you could put this inside floors and it'd be awesome. And I was like, that's cool, man. I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And he calls me back. He's like, no, I really think you should do this. And he flew out to Vermont, and we sat down and had dinner. And it struck me how similar the flooring world was the ski industry. Because the ski industry is like super old school. Everybody's been doing the same, like a lot of the same stuff for a long time. And here's this new material that is like genuinely novel in the ski world. And likewise in the flooring business, everybody's been building, like, no joke, the same floor construction like since the 70s. And so when we can come with this material, decrease G loading in your knees by 46% with one shot, and then the vibrations go down by 70%, we're talking to people who are like big dudes who are worth a lot of money for the big channels to have them playing and stuff. And these guys, if they can get 1 more year, 2 more years out of their career, like, what does that mean for them? What does it mean for their future and their families and stuff like that? And then you can scale it down to the peewees, like in high school and stuff like that. We had one coach or one referee who called us up and was like, what's inside this floor? Because I know it's just redone, but it's different. There's something about it that's different. And we explained it to the guy, and he's like, no way. This is crazy. He's like, everybody that's been playing this thing, you can tell it sounds different. No one says their knees hurt or anything like that. So it's pretty wild. And then we also have patents like, boat hulls and stuff. So we can decrease vibrations in boats. And at the end of the day, everybody wants a bigger boat. So we can basically build a boat, spray the stuff inside. So when you're driving it, it just feels like it might be 1,000 pounds heavier without actually being heavier. And you can absorb vibration. So back to that, buzzing vibration in a ski going up to your boot and like going to your head saying this is scary. Likewise, a boat, if you can decrease some of the vibrations, the boat's just going to feel better. It's going to feel bigger. It's going to feel heavier. And you're like, yeah, and everybody wants a bigger boat. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And the applications are genuinely like endless. And there's some that have been made already. So like this stuff is already in like back protectors and helmets and stuff and work gloves. So if you hammer your hand by accident, rather than shattering your hand, you might just bruise it or something. So it's pretty wild. And we were the first ones to, like, at the end of the day, our strategy, and this is free for everybody to steal, I guess, is we look at the product back. Everybody else looks at the product forward. And so we say, okay, rather than putting in like the helmet, or let's say rather than putting the soles of the shoe, let's put in the basketball floor itself. So we look at the product back, and that's why we don't put it in the boots of our skis. Yeah. We put it in the skis themselves. And so you kind of want to stop it at the source. Yeah. And that's something that, like, the strategy that I took on this whole thing, because there's 1.5 million patents out there for like all these different things that are touching people's bodies. And so we're like, let's just go like one step beyond that and like look backwards. And so that's a strategy that we've taken, and seems to be working.
Stop it at its source. That makes sense.
Yeah. So nice. That's VibeStop.
All right, VibeStop. There you have it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it then with the skis, and let's actually talk through your lineup for 23-24.
Cool. Yeah. So the skis we have here, we have just 4 models. We try to keep it super, super simple. You know, at the end of the day, we're selling online, and most people, like when we talk to customers, they're just like, I don't know what those numbers mean. Like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what weight. Like, I'm not sure what heavy is. And I think to a point yesterday is, heavy is all relative, and like you can have a ski that's quote unquote heavy but feels light because it's designed and has like some camber that pops it around the corner that you don't realize the weight. So we have 4 skis. The middle 2 here are in our endurance line. We have an endurance 88 and endurance 98. This is our all-mountain collection. These are the skis that are going to do most things really, really well. And essentially the difference between the two is like, if you ski a little bit more on the trails and you like maybe a little more icy conditions on average. We say kind of around 70% of the time you might be on trail. And, you'll duck off occasionally, but you might default to be on trail. Grab the 88. If you tend to ski a little bit more off trail, you're kind of always hunting the side of the trail. You're constantly, scoping out for the powder line kind of thing. Go for the 98. And the construction side is tweaked to basically perform better in each of those situations, but they're both all mountain, and it is just go a little bit to the left for this guy if you were going to ski a little bit more on the trails. And a little bit to the right if you're going to ski a little bit more off the trails. And that's the baseline. That's the middle of our line. From there, you can go further left to the Atlas here. The Atlas is our carving ski. So if you love being on trails and you're there all the time, that's the ski for you. That's going to rip. It's going to have great camber. It's going to have a lot of grip, and you can just tear down the mountain, no problem. On the other side of the spectrum, if you go bounce beyond the all mountain skis here, bounce to this side, this is our Citadel. This is our carbon fiber, lightweight kind of powder ski. So again, like most people are going for the all mountain, they want to have something that can really do, quote unquote, do it all. But if you find yourself like, hey, you know what, I know I ski powder a lot more often, or hey, you know what, I'm doing backcountry, I'm skinning uphill, go for the Citadel. Yeah. And again, if you love, skiing just on the trails and you're just ripping down groomers all day long, because that's like where you're at, go for the Atlas. But the reality is like most people, this year, we were just talking about numbers before this, like most people are riding the ski because like these 2 skis like have incredible characteristics, and they're just slightly tweaked for one performance versus the other, but they're both epic all mountain skis.
Yeah, and just that broader versatility. I mean, of course, the Endurance 98 was a great tool for us in quite a bit of conditions last year around Mount Crested Butte. Yeah,
this is like the Citadel used to be I'm not sure if I should be biased, but the Citadel used to be my favorite because that was like the ski that I designed. Like when I first started Renoun, I was like, that's the halo ski for me. It's a full carbon fiber with tons of VibeStop because carbon fiber is very high tensile strength. It's like very kind of tinny essentially. And it has a kind of bad undesirable characteristic of like not being as much fun going downhill, but it's really light. And so when you marry that ski with a bunch of VibeStop, you can actually kill a bunch of those vibrations while still having a much lighter ski. So the ski's pretty wild. I love that ski. The thing is though, when that ski came out, became my new favorite.
That's all right.
So,
it's okay to change.
You can have like have favorites with skis, kind of like kids or something like that. But yeah, I really like that ski, and the endurance line as a whole. Like, I mean, they're both like this ski actually was developed first, and it married into this one. So they're the backbones of both these skis are like very, very similar. We just tweaked them a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe just speak to the Citadel as far as how it kind of serves the purpose as both maybe a powder ski or 50-50 ski, or someone using it as a backcountry ski specifically.
Yeah. So the Citadel as a full carbon ski, it's a much lighter ski than you would typically see in a 106 underfoot. But again, because we put so much more VibeStop in it, it doesn't have the same undesirable, like chattery, tinny feel when you're going downhill. It's a ski that most people will lean towards. I wouldn't say like a true pow ski. Like if you're going to Japan, get a 114, get a 120, right? But for most people, if they're honest with themselves, the 106 is going to be plenty of ski for what they're doing. And it's light enough to want to go backcountry. I mean, I've got a pair that has marker kingpins on there, so I can ride that uphill or skin that uphill. And it beats most skis in the weight category kind of thing. So it's got that on side, and it's got just enough rocker, just enough waist width to have enough float. And we say all but the deepest days, and we really mean that. Like, a foot, 2 feet. If you start getting 3 feet, yeah, go to snorkel, get a 114, and like have a good time, kind of thing. And I'm jealous. And then the other side of the spectrum here, the Atlas. That's has a much heavier core. It's got a lot more. It's got all metal in it. It's kind of the opposite side of the spectrum as the Citadel. Like, that's a ski that like you definitely don't want to tour in. It's a ski you want to be very planted to the snow. You're gonna have tons and tons of grip. It's got full camber, so it's not gonna have as much, like we call it slarvy. It's not gonna be like kick out as much. Yeah. It's gonna be a ski that's like kind of sports car, right? You want to be stuck to the road. You want to be ripping around, gripping, and whereas like this ski might be more for drifting. If you want to cruise around, you're floating on the powder, you're sliding back and forth and everything. And then obviously like the endurance series in the middle are going to be the ones that are kind of marrying the best of both those worlds. If you have if you're just choosing one pair of skis to do as much as you can, or you're just trying to fill in the quiver a little bit. That's what the endurance are going to be for. So the construction for all these skis, the way to think about it is like the left-hand side here, the Atlas, that's our skinniest and our heaviest ski. The further you go this way, it's wider and lighter. It's pretty straightforward. And we've tweaked the inside of these skis to basically get those characteristics. And sure, like these left two ones have maple, these two have aspen, these have full metal, these have partial. This one has partial metal, this one only has metal plate. There's a bunch of things. Oh, and this one has like twice as much VibeStop. There's a bunch of like nuances that we change between the skis. But in general, we would try to think like, okay, if you love ripping groomers, go far left. If you love surf and pow, go to Citadel. If you're like doing a bunch of stuff, go to endurance line in the middle here.
All the versatility.
Yeah. And then with the sizing side, from a unisex perspective, we try to bring our skis, like the Citadel comes in a 191, so like a much taller ski, and the endurance goes all the way down to 156. So we have a really, really broad spectrum of usability between who's trying to ride the ski, where it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty rounded out line. Obviously, you have some skis on the ends here that are a bit more nuanced or specific, maybe built in to be that carving ski within the quiver, or if someone's just really sticking to very specific terrain. So yeah, it's nice to see not only that you have that pretty versatile line with a little bit of something for everyone, but also that you're kind of offering those links that can cater to a lot of different people.
Yeah, totally. So it's been pretty cool.
All right, Cyrus, well, it's great to have you back for the summit for the second year. Seems like for the second year in a row, we've lucked out with great conditions, and we are always so stoked to have you and Yasha come through. So thank you for taking the time, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, and you guys are putting on a great show. I can't wait to see what happens in 10, 15 years when this thing's taking over the country.
Yeah, it's growing.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of it.
Thanks for having me.